You've been lied to, but you don't know how. You've searched, you've struggled, you've cried out. You want the truth, but where is it? You've wandered, you fought, you've strived, and you have not been satisfied. What is truth? Where is truth? Who is truth? The kingdom of God, mind control, the last days, higher dimensions, unity, the power of faith, discovering the truth. Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father but through me. God has promised that he will hide us under his feathers, and under his wings we will trust. His truth shall be our shield and our buckler. Discovering the Truth with Dan Duval is the premier program that is designed to center you on the kingdom of God, to equip you with faith in Jesus Christ, and to unveil the truth behind the lies. This program is designed to show you how to become more than you have ever imagined through the power of truth. You shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. And now, prepare for your host, Dan Duval.
Folks, today we are on an adventure. I'm telling you what. This is going to be another one of those programs where you want the pillow, you want it underneath your jaw, you may need a glass of water, because it's going to be an adventure into things that are just out there. It's plain and simple. We have, as a guest again on Discovering the Truth with Dan Duval, Robert Van Dryst Mitchell. And he's been on the program with me a number of times. He has shared his own story between just me and him on several occasions, which will be continuing today. He's also done 2 programs with another survivor named Elena, focusing on Project Montauk and Thoth, Ma'at implants, other things that were related on those subjects. And folks, it's just, that territory where things are just incredible. And I'm learning more all the time, working with survivors like Robert and others. And as we learn, we are able to present the things that we uncover. By the way, those of you that support Bride Ministries financially, you are supporting the healing journeys of people like Robert. And man, is he a champion, just a prevailing overcomer who won't quit until he fulfills his assignment from Jesus Christ. And so, Robert, thank you for your bravery, and thank you for joining me again on Discovering the Truth with Dan Duval.
Welcome, dear friend Daniel, and it's awesome and great to be back on your show, and thanks for your kind words. To be honest, I don't know what the word quitting means anyway. It doesn't come in my vocabulary, so from that point, I will never quit. And we will continue to bring the works of Jesus Christ forth and to unveil the darkness that is encapsulating our earth and the universes out there with Satan's work, and we will continue to expose and bring it to light. And this week has been quite a week, as I have noticed, as Lauren has said to me, apparently also with what has been coming out of my head, apparently as I saw some of the photos. Apparently one of the implants that came out seemed very familiar, similar as Elena's, as I saw on the photo, that apparently came out 2 days ago.
Well, yeah, and I saw that too because you sent it to me. And folks, let me just give you that are listening a little brief snapshot of my guest today. Robert Van Dries Mitchell is an Illuminati defector. The very fact that I'm interviewing him on my program is a miracle in and of itself. It was a long journey to get to the point where I could interview him. And in his first interview, he actually executed the interview as Lauren. And Lauren is one of his alters. Now, as with everyone else in the Illuminati, Robert is DID. He has dissociative identity disorder due to all the traumas that he has been through. And so he has different personalities, which, if you don't understand, I encourage you to go back, to go to bridemovement.com and go to our mind control page where you can learn all about what the dissociative identity disorder is, how it works, how it is created through things like satanic ritual abuse, government-sponsored mind control agendas. Of course, at the furthest end of all of these kinds of things is what would be Illuminati level programming. It's just the worst of the worst, and exactly what my guest has been through. And so when he references Lauren, he's actually talking about one of his parts, and we'll actually be talking about several other of his parts in this interview today as we go forth, and we've already discussed this in advance. And you know, yes, there is a reality, folks, of implants. In other words, not only are people battling against demons and belief systems that have been seeded into them by programmers and really horrible life experiences, brokenness in their soul and in their spirit, they're also fighting against nuts and bolts technology that takes the form of liquid crystals, nanotech, dental implants, torture implants, so on and so forth. And we see the power of Jesus Christ at work to get the physical technology out of the bodies of those that I'm working with. Robert is one of those that has received deliverance from physical technologies. And that's what he was just referencing, that something came out of the back of his head, just an implant. As a matter of fact, you've had other types of things coming out of your body over the past several months. Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, Daniel, and thanks again for the intro of this. Since we did the Montauk interview since last year, I think especially the second one, from October onwards, as Lauren said, we had over nanotech implants that were no bigger than a grain of sand. And so far, as Lauren thinks, we had at least between 400 and 600 of them coming out. And that was only since last year, October, November. And then now with this one that came out this week, as also Elena told Lauren, that at the place where it came out, it was the same place as it happens with hers as well. And she had similar programming done as what was done on me, as you know, through our counseling. So what all came out of Elena so far, that is unfortunate, but we also can expect in our case. God help us. I hope every time when we get those things out, especially if it happens at the night, we don't scream the neighbors awake. I can imagine that at times it could be, depending on how painful it will be, but as Elena told Lauren, at times can be very painful. And no doubt also sometimes, depending on how big they are, the head probably on top could look like a moon crater. I hope it will heal if that happens quickly, because I don't looking forward to look like a moon crater if I have to walk on the streets. But yeah, we have those implants inside of us, and at one point during the counseling and the healing, they need to come out. So I rather have them out than in, and if that means, at times we walk about as if we went to war, then so be it. But yes, people, when you are having done satanic ritual abuse in the severity as I and others did, then you also have to deal with things like implants. And people see, if it comes to implants, I have noticed a lot of people think about implants. Oh, that must be those alien implants that look like something as like a chip. But not all implants that will look like a chip or something that sometimes alien abductees find within their nose, what look like a small tube for maybe 3-4 millimeters in diameter. Implants comes in various forms and sizes, and they become more and more sophisticated, and also much smaller. When we talk about nano implants, as I said before, they are as big or small as a grain of sand. So that already says how small they are. And when you probably put them under in enlargement under something, then you will probably also see how sophisticated they are, because it could hold a whole city on a nano level with conductors and any other type of things that you normally find on a microchip. Not to mention what you can store on one of those, if they are used for storage, of course, because they have different functions. Some are used for interdimensional usage in the way when we talk about, let's say, on a demonic level, and there has been implanted in order to keep control over their victims from, let's say, the lower part of the fourth dimension. Then with this type of nanotech technology, they can do that. But implants come in various forms and in various sizes. As Elena had experienced, she had implants, the crystal implants, who were completely dried up and rock hard, and they came out of her head like 2.5 inch or 2 inch. Gotta help us when it will happen with us, but no doubt I feel we're gonna have to deal with the same thing in the future.
Now,
and Daniel, on this, when it will happen, I also will tell Lauren to keep you up to date with all of this, and I will ask Lauren also, because people see is normally in daily control, she's daily out in the body. So I also will ask her then to make photographs with the BlackBerry phone and things like that, so that we also make and place them on, let's say, the Survivor group and things like that, so that people, or for future blog, that we can show them to people.
now,
And also we provide them you as well.
that's and thank you for that. And you know,
The more people know about it,
that's right.
because people seem to think with implants, oh, it's only like a microchip or something like that, or like a small tube, round tube, about 3-4 millimeters, as it was, let's say, within the 70s, 80s, and 90s within the UFO alien abduction community. Chips has changed over the times, and also its forms, sizes, and its workings.
What happened to the thing that came out of the back of your head 2 days ago? After Lauren, after she pulled it out, because she woke up with a stinging pain, so she go with her finger on the back of her head to feel what it is, and she felt something was sticking out. So she pulled on it, and she pulled out the whole thing. Of course, she was yelling like hell. I am not sure if she woke up the neighbors, but yeah, if that happens, there's not much we can do about it. And then she put it down, and she took the BlackBerry and she took a photograph. But after she took the photograph, she saw within 2 minutes, give or take, she saw the whole implant falling apart, disintegrated before her eyes, as if it is like a self-destruct mechanism. But it's very smart, because this way there is no proof what is left behind. And when people talk about, oh, I had an implant in my head and with no photo to show it, yeah, then people can be dismissed as being a wacko. There it is. There it is. Amazing. Wow.
And in this case, she took on time the photo. Thank God she had just repaired the BlackBerry in time. Thank God for that, so that she could straight away take the photo. And yesterday also she took a photo of the place on the back of the head where it came out. And when you see, if people are on our Facebook page who are listening, she has put it on a number of groups on Facebook. If you see the photo, you can see clearly the place of the back of the head where it came out. And Elena also said it looked in a similar way as the first one that came out of hers, as she confirmed to Lauren.
No, and I've seen a lot of, and folks, if you're wondering, Elena, again, is another survivor that I work with who's been on several of our interviews, including 2 recent ones, Types and Degrees of Hybrids with Carolyn Hamlet, parts 1 and 2. And she's been losing implants for a while. And it was pretty shocking for me, as an outsider, to see the similarity between the appearance of the photo I received from Robert, meaning Lauren, his part that was out, and the photos that I had received from Elena. You know, there's so much to talk about, Robert, and I wanted to get you talking a little bit about this thing. There's a subject in the Bible about the people of God being Israel, the Jews. Throughout the Old Testament, they were God's chosen people. Now, as time moves forward and we move into the present day, there are different groups calling themselves Jews. Specifically, there's a group known as the Ashkenazi, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correct, and then there are the Khazarians. And both use Jew as part of their name. I want you to talk about those groups, though, and talk about them from your knowledge of how they relate to the Illuminati families.
All right. Yeah, that's on itself already a very vast subject. You probably could fill up a whole program on that alone, especially
maybe we will.
How it plays out in our current world and how it also came to be. Because the root of the Ashkenazi and the Khazarian is one and the same root. They are the Jews that left Sumeria between 500 and 700 AD. They were the Jews that were taken to Sumeria from Palestine, or what we call now Israel, and were in captivity. What I said, at one point when they moved out of Sumeria between 500 and 700 AD, they moved northwards and they ended up in the Caucasus Mountains region in southern Russia, in an area what was called Khazaria land. And that is where, and the Khazaria people, they took over the identity of, in this case, the Sumerian Jews that landed there. After a while, they intermingled, and the Sumerian Jews married into the Khazarian people and Khazarian people in the visiting Jews from Sumeria. Now, in this case, the Khazarians, they took over the identity of the Jews, and they became the chameleons that we know now as the Khazarians. One of their aristocracy within this group that became later known, especially within the 17th, 18th, 19th, and 20th century, as the Romanovs, a very powerful aristocratic family from Russia. They are the Khazarian, part of the Khazarian Jews. But the ones that became the Ashkenazis, maybe a few centuries after they arrived, they moved further to the Western Europe, and they started to mingle and settle down within what we call like Germany, Austria, and countries like that, and they started to intermingle with the local tribes and families, and they became the later known Ashkenazi Jews. They at one point intermingled themselves with a very powerful warlock occultic family called the Bauers, and out of this Bauers rose the dynasty, among others, as what we know as the Rothschild family, the 5 different strands of the Rothschild families. Also out of this same Bauer family in southern Germany came forth another few families, the House of Hanover, what became later known as the House of Windsor, that now rules the throne in the United Kingdom, and as another family that came out of this fort, what we now know back home in the U.S. as the Bush family from George Bush Sr. and George Bush Jr., etc. And all those families are interconnected to each other. In my case, from my father's family side, they also had a genetic line to this same Bauer's family, what also made me, as Robert, also related indirectly with those other three families as well, what also had a very big impact on my life, because I dealt throughout my whole life with so well the Rothschilds, the Windsor family, and also back home with the Bush family. Although back home my main handler was then Dick Cheney, but more about that later on in one of the subjects that we will talk about. But to come back on our modern time and how things are being played out in our current world is, at one point in the early part of the 20th century, the Rothschild gave the order to execute all the members of the Romanovs in order to take over the power for the world themselves. Unfortunately, they failed because some of the members had survived their onslaught, and myself, I witnessed this news when it came in the 70s, in 77, to the eye of Sir Evelyn de Rothschild. After my ritual under the Vatican that everyone that is 13 have to undergo, I was brought in the month of May to the mansion in England of Evelyn de Rothschild, where I was a lot of time for programming, and other things. And at one morning, I remember, it must have been around probably May the 16th or something, I saw one of his aides came in a hurry, one of the aides of Sir Evelyn, Robert de Rothschild, and he gave him the bad news that their spies in the Soviet Union had heard and found out that some members of the Romanov had survived their onslaught, and what means that they must have their riches and things like that stored not only in Russia at the time but also outside of Russia, and in secret they had built up their empire, and they took over parts of Russia and other parts slowly. And we are now dealing with the situation that currently what we see around in the world between East and between the West, what is completely now dominated and controlled by the Rothschilds, we now also see that the Romanovs has now fully control over countries like the Russian Federation, China, North Korea, and Iran. And on not only on a military basis, but also on an economic basis. And they have also, to a major extent, control over all the BRICS countries as well. But not only this, the Romanovs currently are also in alignment with Muslim factions that they're using against the West in order to destroy not only the West, but also the children of Jesus Christ, of God, and our Savior Jesus Christ, the Christians. And that is what we now seen playing out with ISIS and things like that. And someone said to us, yeah, it's the Jews that is behind ISIS and things like that. They are right to a certain extent. Because when Russia fell apart in the 90s, the Khazarians let a lot of Jews going to their home country, as what they call Israel. But what wasn't told to the world and the media is that a lot of those Khazarian Jews went to Israel in order to infiltrate the Romanov territory, because the Israel that we know now from 1948, as people should know, is not God's Israel, but is a Zionist Israel, and that is how it was created in the first place. Probably, Daniel, can you tell more about the difference between God's Israel and the current one? I know a lot of Christians seem to go up in arms when you tell this, because they have been led to believe that the current Israel is the Israel that God has designed. And no, the current Israel that we see created from 1947 or 48, that is the Illuminati counterfeit Israel by Satan. And this Israel is now completely slashed up in two pieces. One part is controlled, and there's still a power struggle going on between the Zionist Rothschild Jews in Israel, and in this case the new group that came up of the Khazarian Jews. I hope so far this makes sense to you, Daniel, what I've been telling.
Well, you know, sometimes, folks, I get to let my guests break the bad news, so I don't have to do everything, you know, that puts me under the bus here. What Robert is telling you about the Israel that was created in 1948 is the same thing that many of the survivors, I mean, that have any kind of connection to this thing, are telling me. It's just this singular revelation, this concept. The creation of this 1948 Israel was completely inspired by Illuminati factions. I mean, for crying out loud, the Rothschilds secured the land before 1948. There's so much history on this thing, and the more history you read, the more it just keeps going back to these families. Well, Robert is not unique unto himself in what he is telling you, and I'll tell you what, there's a lot of problems that I've run into when I've looked into the concept of the 1948 Israel and what the Bible says about Israel. And I'm not a replacement theologian at this point, where I believe that God does not have plans involving a genetic Israel in the last days. I just, at this point, personally, folks, I'm just going to say it. I do not believe that the 1948 Israel is God's Israel. It's a secular nation. And yeah, there are components of what have happened there that seem to fulfill certain aspects of Bible prophecy, but those, as I've looked into them, those prophecies that they often point to are taken out of context. And what I've seen is that they're pulling from passages regarding the millennial reign after Jesus has already come back, speaking of what he's going to do with Israel and saying this is how we know this 1948 Israel is the plan of God. It's just that the passages are out of context. Nothing seems to make sense. And when people like Robert have come to me and begun to explain what's really going on, the case is so strong. And I think that it gets even stronger as we have realized, and this is a fact, that programming has gone on underneath the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. And I have several survivors, one of which has actually come on my program to talk about it, Dr. Rob Ruckert, they receive programming under the Temple Mount to get them to have parts that agree with end-time agendas that are being authored by satanic powers. And they're tying these agendas to, guess what? The modern-day state of Israel. It's a really bad case. There's nothing that says God's hand is really in this. And as a matter of fact, I'll just be honest, when I've sought God about this very subject, in light of all the things that I have learned, I have not gotten from God that this is in fact his creation. I have not gotten that in prayer, folks. And I'll tell you what, all I can say is, look into it, because this is a shell shocker for many people. Many people have been told, pray for Israel, pray for this nation. Does it mean that God doesn't love people in the nation of Israel that live there physically and are human? No, he loves them. He loves them, and he wants them to be saved and redeemed and healed, just like he wants you saved, redeemed, and healed. But the agenda behind that plot of land, well, I think there's been a bit of a hoodwinking. And I think people like Robert would have to absolutely agree. And we're all looking at the same thing. So those are my thoughts for now, Robert. You can continue, or we can move on to another subject.
All right. Now, yeah, concerning what you said about programming, I had also done, programming under, not only, as you mentioned already, the Temple Mount, but also under Mount Hermon. And if I'm correct, that is the place where the fallen angels came.
Right.
On their small mission of 200 angels, if I'm correct. But is, by the way, now closed off by the United Nations. For whatever reason, they, of course, gonna say, but whatever the reason they're gonna give, the United Nations is themselves a very corrupt vehicle of the Illuminati, as I have seen myself with rituals I have witnessed under the UN building in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. But to come back, the current Israel, and God, I know that God, his heart is hurting in the way also how Jews are being smashed literally in between the two factions who call themselves like God's Jewish people, while they are not, because they are part of the Jews who are known in the Bible, if I'm correct, as the synagogue of Satan. And again, those are the Jewish people that came originally as prisoners in Samaria, and later on they took on the identity of the Sumerians, and they moved up northwards, and that is how they came into Europe. And we talk about, in this case, two factions of the same group, but with two different names. And in a way, it is like two brothers who fighting for, let's say, the same girlfriend.
Wow.
And that is, in the end, what it is. And when I witnessed, that was in May 16th, if I'm correct, in 1977, when I was at the mansion, and this aide of Sir Evelyn de Rothschild came in, and whatever he told him, I had never heard a ruckus like that ever in my life. It was like as if the room was hit by a hurricane, because I heard suddenly furniture being smashed against the wall and everything else. And I know from what I have witnessed, the place was always very nice and neat and everything else, and everything was always in order. But after that meeting, whatever the aide has said, and later I heard through others what was said, then Sir Evelyn got so angry. I never saw him that angry in my whole life. So far I have known him, unfortunate 99% of my life. And so, but I said, if they had succeeded in 1917 by killing off the Rothschilds, you and I wouldn't have been speaking here according to their plan in freedom, because originally they had planned the New World Order, or what they called the New World Order, or by its various names. They would have installed this originally as the Age of Horus in 2000.
And I believe, weren't you even at a ritual that attempted to bring in the Age of Horus?
Yes, that was a ritual in 1999. That was under the pyramid of Giza. The people, there were a small group of 30, 40 people over there during this ceremony or this ritual, with a child sacrificed, or a couple of children. And the Queen was there, the British Queen Elizabeth was there, her mother, the Queen Mum, was there, one of the High Commissioners of the United Nations was there, and a few other world leaders were there as well. I tried to think. One of the world leaders was the one from the French president, current president of 99. I have to think about his name, who was present, and a few others from a few other countries. Also, members of the royal Dutch family were there as well. I think it was Queen Beatrice who was there with her, no, not with her husband, because he was not well at that time, but she was there, if I'm correct, with her son. I think it was her oldest one, who is now king of Holland, or of the Netherlands. And there were a few other leaders as well. Also, George Bush Sr. was there as well, and Dick Cheney, and what is the, try to think, what is the guy that we had in the George Bush Jr. government, the black guy, Powell, or I try to think of his name.
Powell?
Yes, he was there as well.
Mm.
And that was in August of 99. And that was to calling in for the Age of Horus. And it had to do also with certain sunspot activity and things like that as well.
Wow.
And it was a whole Egyptian ceremony as they had in ancient Egypt and things like that. But also had triggered me, certain programming in me as well. Because I was used, a lot of my programming was also used with names of various gods of the ancient world, like Egypt, Sumerian, and other nations around the world that had gods.
Which?
One of them was Osiris. Osiris was not one of them, but Geb was one of them.
Mm-hmm.
What I remember of name. Let's see, something with Gesnep. I have to look up the exact name on the list of Egyptian gods, because they had programmed a number of them in me. But one of them was activated during this ritual. I do remember when they started the ritual, I started to switch, and after the ritual, I was quite ill for days. When it happened in it was what I said in August 1999, and it certainly had affected me in a big way. But that ritual was dedicated in order to bring in the Age of Horus. If they had still the timeline for 2000 in mind, I'm not sure, because they of course knew because of the resistance with the Romanovs, but they still have set in mind the Age of Horus up till today, unless they have changed the name again, because I also remember in the Montauk project we also were told about this, but they used different names.
Well, and the interesting thing is that I know Carolyn Hamlet has told me when she was younger, she was told they wanted to install this thing by the year 2000. It was the same information that was going forth, but well, something happened. And folks, this is the interesting thing. Robert is not kidding about them tying him to a lot of these ancient deities. In fact, I did a program associated with something I have called the Principality Prayer, how to get set free from cosmic powers and fallen heavenly powers. And I have a list attached to that. I kid you not, we have had to deal with every name on that list with Robert. The list is his list. And I'll tell you what, I have to expand the list because since I made the list, we had to deal with a whole slew more. And it is amazing that you can have one. As a matter of fact, sometimes we joke about it at this point. You know, how can you be married that many times?
Yes, I joked about it, or Lauren, and I didn't remember that I had that many weddings, to be honest. I would have otherwise I had a whole room or mansion full with wedding gifts. I don't remember that, but I don't mean, of course, get wet in the normal sense, but yeah, we did joke about it to keep it lighthearted, but unfortunately, it's not lighthearted because this is what a lot of high-level survivors as myself have to go through by being wet, or whatever you want to call it, in ceremony to some kind of demon. And people, when we talk about demons, when you take ancient mythology and ancient history with the names of the gods, that is what we talk about demons, about the powers and principalities. And if you want to know more about this as listeners, I would then advise go back to Daniel's list of shows he has done and look up some of the shows he has done, as Daniel already mentioned. And for other survivors, if you get a feeling something similar happened to you and you have not found any help yet, I would advise you then to come in contact and write an email to Bride Ministries, because they are all, so far I know, one of the very few, if not the only one at the moment, that are helping survivors as myself and others to get healed and to get everything undone what is done to you. I don't kind of say and lie it's going to be easy, because it isn't. Especially in my case, I had actively under 47 years of my life under programming. At least 47 or 49, no, 49 years. I'm only getting free for the last 3 years. When I came to Christ in August 2013 through a lovely woman called Jean. I will not mention her last name for privacy reasons, but she was the one that brought us to Jesus Christ. And I thank her for this, because that was the first step on my road to freedom. And I remember then Taylor took over, and Daniel was in contact a lot of time with Taylor, and Daniel has been trying to get us on his shows since, if I'm correct, from November 2013. And a number of things happened, but in the end it didn't came from it, because God thought, for several reasons, Robert is not ready, and also the audience, and Robert needs more healing. So in the end, Daniel started our counseling in April 2014, and later on, then the first interview started. But as survivors, if you have not any help yet, I would advise the only way what would truly help, especially when you deal with demonic programming, as what was done to me and others, then only through the healing of Jesus Christ. That is the only way how to go, because you cannot combat spiritual programming, what SRA is, satanic ritual abuse. You cannot combat that by standard psychiatric treatment or through a whole battery of psychologists or even therapists, no matter how well intended their actions are. They cannot do the things that you only can do with the help of Jesus Christ, His blood, and the work of His angels on His behalf. as we have seen in our case, and no doubt in other cases that Daniel worked with as well. So for survivors out there, I would say, if you have not any help as yet, and you want to get help, and you want to get healed, get in contact with Bride Ministries, and they can refer you to people that they work with, or you can go on the list. But at least something could be done in the future, and it is well worth it.
And thank you for that.
You're welcome. I feel that to be told, because a lot of people running around in circles for 10, sometimes 15, 20 years, going to a psychiatrist. The psychiatrist is maybe, if he is lucky, maybe to merge one or two altars together. That is what the Illuminati wants, because then he is doing their job. And they don't get, they think that they're going to get healed. Well, they don't. They're running in circles. Nothing is going to be done. And when he dies, when at one point the person dies, then it is too late. And that is what the enemy wants.
I will say this for those of you that are listening. We are actually building solutions as fast as we can. We do have a waiting list for those that are applying to our organization for help, because you cannot afford help. And that list is getting longer and longer, to the extent that we are now looking at the only solution is to build a training school to train people to fight this battle with the right tools. And that's a component of our vision that we are working towards establishing, because the need is, I mean, for those of you that are not in this camp, that you're not walking in someone like Robert's shoes, you have no idea the depth of need and the quantity of individuals that need help because they've been through programming. It's way more than I would have ever anticipated. And so anyway, but thank you for that. I want to move into another direction now, because there are really so many components and facets of your story. It's just incredible. It boggles the imagination. One of those is the Secret Space Program. And I've had other guests, Carolyn Hamlet being one of them, to talk about components of involvement in the Secret Space Program that pertained to her. Well, you've been involved in the Secret Space Program, and I want to just turn it over to you and let you talk a little bit about what you know, and begin in on some of the things that you have seen and witnessed as one who has been initiated into this activity.
All right, thanks. Thanks for this question. Concerning the space program, it has various components. For people seem to think a sci-fi like Star Trek, it's only in the imagination of some writers, and it's only something that's going to happen within, let's say, the next 400 years. Wrong, people, because this technology, what you see in Star Trek, it has been already developed in the 20th century. A lot of it came out of the Tesla technology that Nikola Tesla had developed. Unfortunately, they made sure he died off, and they took everything that he created, they took it away and used it and utilized it and created their own technologies with, because a lot of his technologies of Tesla were created to help humanity. Unfortunately, as usual with the Illuminati, anything good, they turn it into something bad and negative. I can give you one example on this, although this has nothing to do with the Secret Space Program, but there was a scientist in the 70s, I'm not sure what his name was. He was called in to work for the CIA for the so-called the good of humanity and to defend the United States from its enemies. So he started to develop certain technologies, but also he started to develop a technology, what they had tested out in the field. If that would have been applied in our world today, it would have created a world without hunger, because he had created a certain type of ray. If you use that, what he did, he placed a seed of a tomato plant into the desert. He put the ray above the ground, and he saw within 2 hours a whole bush of tomato plants coming out of the ground. Now, if you can apply this on a much bigger scale, not only on a tomato plant, but on any other type of plant that can give food, you can see the possibilities how you can erase hunger out of this world. Of course, this is not what the powers that be, the Illuminati and their overlords, the Draconian High Council, and of course Satan and his councils want, because they want to subjugate this world. For better, they want to kill off 90% if they have their way of the human population, and what is left will be their slaves, and the ones that are going to be killed, of course, especially if they are not Christians, then they will ending up in the kingdom of Satan, so he thinks, because only the ones who are born Christians and who sees Jesus as their Savior, they are the ones that go to heaven. But to come back on this story, what he later found out with one of his inventions like this is that the CIA, instead of something that could be used for the good of humanity, they turn it around, and they created a weapon that they could turn on you, and that beam, when it is hit you, it could blow up your organs, as he was told.
Wow.
So he was quite, and this was in the 70s, and he was quite shocked. And of course, they took him down because they were afraid he wanted to talk about it. So they picked him up and they put him in a mental ward somewhere in the U.S. I'm not sure if he is still alive, because this scientist in the 70s, he was already, if I'm correct, in his late 40s. So he probably died by now. But in order to make him not to come out and speak, yeah, they had to put him away for life in a mental ward, and end of that story. But if his applications, or what he had created, was used for the good of mankind, we would have lived already in a world that could have been halfway to paradise. And the same with Tesla, Nikola Tesla. If his inventions would have been used for the good of mankind, we would have also been halfway to paradise in how the state of our world is, the environment and everything else. But to come back on the space program, a lot of also Tesla's technologies that has been developed has been now applied to the space program, and we got now technologies that can bring us to the other side of the galaxies within minutes or of hours of time, by also they using natural wormholes that are in the universe that has been created from when the omniverse or the multiverse was created by our Heavenly Father in the first place. And also because of some of our visitors gave also the Illuminati and their forces certain knowledge base on certain technologies as artificial stargates. Apparently, when we go back in history, some of the cuneiforms of the Sumerian and the tablets of Sumerian tablets apparently also shows things connected with stargates as well. This is another reason why we had on top 9/11, because 9/11 was a prelude to give the government any reason to invade any country that they want by posing them as the enemy of the United States. And that is why we end up in Iraq, and we stole all the museums empty of most of the tablets, especially tablets that shown alien technologies, or even on matters as ascension and how people can ascend. I don't believe in the New Age ascension myself, But yeah, a lot of people out there, including some of the people within the Illuminati, seem to believe there is merit in it. I only believe that we can ascend through Jesus Christ and through His power. That is my belief, personally. But of course, if people want to believe otherwise, that is of course to them. But I feel the other way is, to me, is a lie of Satan, who is the father of all lies out there. So far I know. And concerning the secret space program, we got various bases all over our solar system. As I already mentioned in the Montauk interview, I have been on the one on Mars, the one that was connected with the Mars or with the Montauk project. But there are a number of bases on and within the Mars planet, also on some of the moons, and also moons of other planets in our solar systems. And even we got military bases and presence even in other star systems now. Our government is secret, especially the clandestine part that work with so-called aliens. Some of the alien factions are now also stationed in star systems like Orion, for instance. And that is where they also working together with the draconian reptiles, especially the big ones.
Huh.
And some of the big ones, I can tell you, they can be up from they are around 18 to 20 feet tall. And they got wings 2 hearts, and they are very hard to kill, and they certainly weigh a couple of tons at least. And they can be as strong as about 8 to 12 men. That is the draconian reptiles that are about 20 feet in size.
And these are things that you have encountered with your...
Yes.
I mean, you've encountered them.
Yes.
Like you're not saying you read this in a storybook here.
No.
See...
I have seen them myself. Within the Montauk base, I saw Nephilim hybrids that they created out of time traveling back to the time of the biblical flood, and the scientists collected DNA samples of just died out creatures that lived during the flood. Some are reptilian, some are of other forms, and also the giants themselves, the Nephilims. Also, they time traveled even further back before the flood, and in some cases they got live DNA, and that is how they created the hybrids that we have on Mars, within the planet of Mars and other places. The reason that they are at the moment still there, and they did it over there on Mars, is they thought if it breaks out, at least now for the moment, they will not reach the general population, so that planet Earth doesn't wake up to what's going on. And that was part of the reason why the genetic program, in order to create a Nephilim, and the ones I saw were up till 18, 20, 22 feet, had long orangey yellow hair, 2 rows of teeth, the ones that I saw and witnessed. And those came from DNA samples that was collected through the time travel Montauk project by sending scientists back and forth. Mainly they send it out children, because children are more able to cope with the time traveling than adults, as they found out. And that is why in the time travel part you hear especially a lot of stories of survivors when they were like children.
Right.
Because for some reason children were more able to handle the strain without going crazy and all that than adults. I don't have an explanation why it is like this. I only know from my own experience what I have seen that it is like this, connected with the time travel part. But it says connected with Mars and And the Montauk Genetics Lab, yeah, some of the hybrids, Nephilim that I have seen there, especially the human hybrid, the human Nephilim, they can be between 14, 18 to 22 feet tall. And some got purple colored eyes, and what it says, orangey yellow type of long hair, and some even red hair, by the way. But if I'm correct in the Bible, it also speaks of the Nephilim, and the Nephilim are also described, I think, also with reddish type of hair in some cases, if I'm correct.
Well, they certainly are in tales of like the Americas. I know I've come across that.
Yes.
And
yes, a lot of the Nephilim, or giants, as they called in normal terms, I think, and especially the ones being found in North America, South and Central America, they seem to have all reddish type of hair.
Yes.
But the ones I also saw had yellowish, orange color, and in some cases red as well. So they come again in different sizes, in length, but also in colored hair, the length of the hair, the rows of teeth. What I did saw, they all had about 6 fingers, including with the thumb, and also the feet, 6 toes. So that seemed to be standard, so far I can tell, with the Nephilim that I have witnessed. And people, when we talk about this, we talk about the biblical Nephilim that the Bible talks about, and also other ancient books as well. Concerning to this, also what I said before, why we had 9/11 was partly related with that America needed a prelude to go to war to any country that they wanted, and that is why we ended up under this lie in Iraq, and we ransacked every museum that we could and stole all the tablets. Some of the tablets that were no use, by the way, that were returned back to Iraq and to their museums, with the apologies, of course. But the ones that pertaining to stargates, the ones that were pertaining to ascension methods, they were still under control in American laboratories and in vaults hidden under Washington, D.C. and other military bases, and they are kept under lock and key. But that was one side connected with the Sumerian part. Again, to come back on the space program, the secret space program, it is very active. We operate at the moment in a large part of the universe. We're working together with the Draco reptilians, among others. And even among them, I know within the exopolitical scene, they seem to play out that the Dracos are the bad guys and the Nordics, the Pleiadians, are the good guys. But what I have witnessed in some cases, that is not always the case. Because I have also witnessed in some cases that I saw so-called draconian reptiles together in the same room with blonde-eyed, blue-eyed, blonde-haired Nordics, as how they've been described by contactees and people that have seen them. Probably it could be that there are also within the Nordic groups and the Pleiadians that you maybe have various factions. That could be easily the case, although I cannot be certain of that. But I said I have seen them together in the same space within the same underground military base where our soldiers, special forces, were present as well. And from that point, what we hear within the exopolitical world, again, part of it is true and part of it is disinformation, because the things are not as black and white as I have witnessed, as Robert myself, firsthand.
Now, one of the components of this, and I don't know that we can necessarily relate it to Secret Space Program, although it seems to be somehow connected, because It involves going into that realm we call outer space, which I believe to be a component of the second heavens. And
That's right.
it just doesn't seem that there's any reason that would not be true. It's like all these spiritual things and strange things, they just occur there openly. And we ran into this thing that there are sex temples, and they are not just, on Earth as part of ancient society and cultures are concerned. They had various temples in Greece, Rome. It's, old school prostitution houses, except that they would always have sex for a purpose. It was a way to worship the god or goddess in the temple. Well, we ran into this thing that there are sex temples in the heavens, and some of these exist in places like Mars. And, Robert, we found that you had a couple of parts that were actually used in these places. And as we had talked about, doing before the program, we were going to have those parts of you actually tell what they remember from their perspective. Is that still okay?
For me, it's okay, but of course it all depends on Kate and Clarissa if they have the courage enough to come forward. But that is what you meant about them, and because they also Taylor wrote out the drawing because he was then out, if I'm correct.
Yes.
On the description of Kate and Clarissa, and if I'm correct as well, correct me if I'm wrong, apparently the drawing that I made looked much like other drawings that you had from other survivors as well, if I'm correct?
This is 100% correct. You drew me a picture that someone else drew me. And
all right, so
it was,
without knowing who that was.
Right, yeah. It was unbelievable. I was like, how can... Out of the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, let all things be established. That's it. And so I'm just going to ask the question. Kate, would you like to come to the surface and tell us what you remember about these sex temples? I invite you to come to the surface.
Yeah, so you're standing next to me now on that, people. In case you think next to me in the physical room, I mean next to me on the inside. I know it's for people hard to comprehend this but when we talk about inner world, that's completely a different realm. Probably Daniel can talk a whole episode on this himself. And on the inside, people, you have to remember that altars look just as different as humans in the outside world. So in this case, some girl could have, let's say, a pig's tail, and glasses, for instance, and the other could be tall or fat or whatever, or in whatever form or slim, in any form or shape. And that is the same with the altars on our side as well. And Kate is an 18-year-old altar. Clarissa, another one that you probably also want to talk about, who underwent the same thing. She is 17. And yes, they are 2 of the girl altars, as Daniel already described, who were used in those, I'm not sure if you can call it like this, interdimensional, sex samples in a way. Yeah, we do talk about interdimensional, because we only not talk about the physical, in the physical sense, on Mars, as in the third dimension, but also crossing over to other dimensions, or even on timelines. Is that correct, Daniel?
Yes,
in the way that I described things?
That's absolutely it. And before we let Kate talk, because
I see the nervousness going up with her.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's going to be okay.
I told her just think about things that make you happy, and just think that you just talk to Daniel, and things will be okay. But yeah, I was surprised, or not? Yeah, me, when you had this counseling session with Taylor when she was out, and this subject came up, and you also said you had others that had drawn the same type of drawings. And now Kate had seen also other kids as well, like Robert, male and females. And so, yeah, Robert, me, or we are not the only one out there. In this case, when Kate was brought to some of the temples, and some of the temples, as Kate saw, she probably can explain it to you herself, looked like some of our temples that we had in ancient Greece, for instance. Or the temples that we had in ancient Egypt, Dendera, or temples like that.
Kate, why don't you begin?
I will switch over then now to Kate.
Okay.
Hello.
Hi, Kate. How are you?
Hi, Daniel. I'm okay. I'm kind of nervous, but Robert has explained, and Lauren, the purpose of this.
Well, you're very brave, and I have told you that from the very beginning. Here's some living water and some bread of life to munch on while we do this.
All right, thank you.
Kate, why don't you begin by telling me how you remember getting to the temples?
Okay. That last time that this happened, I have to think what year we are now. We are now in 2016, if I'm correct.
Yes.
Yes. Last time of my memories of this is only going back to a couple of years, 2012, 2010 was one of the last times. But in the earlier times, we going back way back to the 70s, and in most time when I was brought in Robert's physical body, especially when he was a young teenager. Mm-hmm. And when Robert was brought through a gate, Robert was brought with his handler. I think it's a handler, as they call the person that goes with you.
Mm-hmm.
When that person, a female in most cases, at times, brought Robert through a gate from a location on Earth. And when Robert stepped out of the portal, he ended up then in a different place, but in most cases could have been on a completely different place than planet Earth. In a few cases, it was on the moon that we have.
Mm-hmm.
We got a domed area. For some of the domed areas, they got on the inside certain structures created what looked like ancient temples, as I also have seen on pictures, like some of the ancient temples from Greece with all the pillars.
Mm-hmm.
I think we still got remnants, if I'm correct, as one of those temples around in Greece. Is it the Temple of Olympus?
Okay.
In or a feet, yeah, in Greece. But within the temple structure, they had a certain layout. If I had given to Taylor, who all wrote it down and sent you, but
Right.
was like a structure, a circle within structures on the inside, and male and females were laid side by side as like a clock in hours. And in the center, the size of the circle could be between what I have witnessed, between 20, 35 feet up till maybe even 100 or more feet from one end to another. Then a priestess, because they always use females for this, went into a certain state during a ritual, and suddenly a ball of light appeared, and out of this ball of light that started to grow and grow, it was like a silent explosion appeared, and a portal opened up. Myself in Robert's body, because I was pulled out as Kate during this point. Robert and other children were laid on granite slabs. I think Taylor has mentioned this to you in the drawings. And so some slabs were meant for males and others for females, who were laying side by side. When the portal opened, then another male priest came in, and he spoke then what looked like Latin, by the sound of it, and that went on for probably 10-15 minutes. And after that, when this portal was opened, a light came out of the portal at first, and that went through the whole temple complex. What is this circle? As I said, what had open space, because we could see also the sky, not the sky, but the starry sky in space, because it was all in a glass dome. On this occasion, on the moon, and when this light came out of the portal and that went around, later on other beings came out. They came out initially as a ball of light, and what I said, we were with 12 children, including myself, and the different balls of light grew in other type of creatures. Initially, they grew into human form, except human forms don't normally, humans, so far I know, don't have like tails. And the skin is not like a rat, as I remember, like a crab. And things like that. Also, the eyes were fiery red. So far I saw them up close. And then they started, when they came out, most of them looked like male, although we were told later, apparently, whatever they were both sexes. And then they started to rape, to have the sexual act, with, in this case, the children as myself, who were bound on this slab of granite. Sorry, it's still hard to talk about this at times.
It's okay. You are so
because
brave.
It brings a lot of emotion up. But yeah, Robert says it needs to be talked about because people need to learn about it, so that other survivors who had similar things know that they are not crazy, as we are always been told we are. And as you said, we are not the only one. So sometimes I have you can probably hear it sometimes in my voice. Yeah, that I'm struggling with it, and my apologies for this.
Don't apologize, folks. What's happening here is that there is a part of Robert. Her name is Kate, and this really happened. And there is real emotion because it really happened. This is why God wants to heal Kate, because she hurts for what she has been through. And if there's no one that knows how to help survivors like Robert, people like Kate, who are part of Robert, that have been through very difficult things, don't get healed. They don't get to talk. The reason why we're doing this is because the body of Christ needs to wake up out of our state of ignorance and realize we have work to do. There is a job Jesus wants done. And Kate is doing an awesome job of explaining the things she has seen and survived on behalf of Robert. So, Kate, go ahead and continue.
Okay, thank you. And yeah, you have doing a great job in the way how you explain things, and I totally agree that people need to wake up to this. Not only ordinary people that listening who think, oh, nice and interesting. No, it's also, but also even more so for survivors who are struggling with thinking, I'm going crazy. This cannot be real. My mind is going crazy and something is wrong with me, because Robert is only one out of, as Robert says, probably one out of millions who underwent this. And also, the higher someone comes from, as Robert says, a bloodline, the more demonic they undergo as he did. And for survivors, if you got parts, as myself, as Kate, or when Clarissa can speak, you got parts with similar stories. And I will say to the core, or the presenter, as they call it, I think as Robert said, who is out, don't dismiss those parts that it is a fantasy or that it is just your imagination. Because what Robert has survived, and that they created parts like myself and others to undergo this gruesome type of ritual, and the rape and all the other things, especially being raped. It's already enough being raped by a human, let alone if you are being raped by what you may consider as a demon. Because I saw during the rape that person transforming as from what looked initially like a human, in some cases as it transformed into a reptilian, what is now known as a reptilian. Or in other cases it transformed into a crab-like creature, what is scary. Especially the ones that already looked like red in color, and during this sexual thing, what was disgusting. To be honest, yeah, they transformed into a big crab-like creature. What was, I'm not sure how big, but probably between 6 and 8 feet tall. The same as the reptilian type of creatures. But I want to say to other survivors who are listening, especially to the ones that are out on the outside, and you hear on the inside some of the authors speaking about things like this, no matter what the outside world or society tells you. What your parts on the inside tells is 9 out of 10 times the truth. Unfortunate. It's the outside world that wants you to believe that you go crazy and that it is all in your mind, in your imagination, because they want to lock people out like ourselves up if they could get away with, in order to keep everything under cover, under the wraps, as Robert would say. And I would urge every survivor who has similar experiences to contact people like Daniel Duval and seek out help, as Robert already said in his plea to the listeners out there, because what I'm talking about, I still find it a hard time to talk about it, but I do feel it's time that the world does need to know what is going on. And this happened not only with me, but there are countless of others out there. Some experiences are physically on Earth, others are, as Heidi has told me, on different timelines, or even parallel Earths, for that matter. It's happening all over out there, and the survivors out there, they should know, when you got parts who are telling you this, don't dismiss them. No matter what society says, it is your imagination, it's a fantasy. Don't believe that, because your inner parts, a lot of them has suffered, and they are not lying about this. So I urge to survivors, listen to your parts, and please, by the grace of God, take them serious.
Kate.
Because yes,
you are so correct. And folks, Heidi is another one of Robert's parts on the inside, just so that there's no confusion. Kate, I wanted to have you fast forward a little bit. After they were finished with that part, that horrific part of the ritual, there was more that happened. What was the main overarching purpose?
In some cases, especially with the girls when they were impregnated, was in order to create hybrid children. So far we understand now. But there were also child sacrifices as well. And this was in order to feed the energies for the demonic realms. Because all of this, what happens, as I said, they may look like human initially, but when they shapeshifted in their true form, and also their eyes were not human. A lot of the eyes, as Robert has witnessed and also heard from others, they were like reddish, like a demon eye. Though I'm not sure if all demons got like red eye. But the thing is, with places like this, it is a lot of the events and rituals taking place is also to feeding not only demonic entities and the demonic realm, but also to feed future events or powering up also persons. That is another big part.
So
in this case, we were brought at one point, that was in a different location, not in a temple like this. We also were brought up in the 70s or 80s to a country called Korea, and that had also to do with apparently powering up a certain entity or some sort. And again, we were raped, and the fear and everything that comes through when you are raped, that seemed then to power up, in this case, a certain entity or a certain person. It could be even a demon that will take over a human body that need to be powered up, and they're using this scenario to rape children or even adults they're using that up to power up that entity, the demon or the human in question or whatever need to be powered up. And
Wow.
that is part of the purpose of all of this. Besides also that they're creating the hybrid children as well, because that's another big part, as we have witnessed. And in this case, with the moon, we were brought through a portal, or what they call it, I think now in modern TV circles, like a Stargate. And a lot of the participants that were there, that were on the site, they were a lot of time also dressed in clothing that we have in certain time areas of our history, like what we saw as in ancient Egypt and in other time frames as well.
My goodness. Wow.
And the ritual started, as I said, what looked and sounded like Latin by the priestess.
Now, folks, one of the things that I have learned is that because the kingdom of darkness runs such a deficit on everything, they actually need and require human energy to do what they do, which they must find a way to harvest. It's actually a principle that undergirds what Kate is telling us. And I mean, this same principle goes back to the same reason why they just want to pump as much fear into society as possible through news media, entertainment, different things. It all, fear, torment, pain, discouragement, depression, it can be harvested and used to power up things in the spirit realm. They're harvesting from the spirit to the spirit, and it is people that are targeted because we have, well, the image of God in us. We are a power source. And Christians who are tied to the Holy Spirit are especially a power source. And it is one of those things that is just so important to understand, and you see it at its greatest extremities in situations like what Kate is explaining. And you know, Kate, you've done a really great job, and I just want to say thank you for what you've been so brave and courageous to share. I really, really appreciate that you're willing to do this.
Thanks. On what you have said, Robert tells me to let you know, also to make people aware. That's, yeah, part of what you said, and to power up entities. What they also use, and as Robert let me know, is the New Age. And that is why people have to turn away from things like the New Age. In order to idolize all the different strands of New Age and things like that, because that is hugely used by the demonic world. Another thing, Robert also let me know, he is okay if you still got the drawing that we had sent you.
Okay.
If people want to know what we talked about when I explained about the grounds with the structures and everything.
Okay.
Robert says it's okay that you can put it up on the website of Bride Ministry as part of the testimony of me as Kate, what I was talking about, so that people have a visual about what we just discussed in this topic.
Now, Kate, did Clarissa want to come out and share as well today?
How much do we have still in time?
We have about 15 minutes.
At the moment she's quite nervous. She asked, can we do it in the next section
Absolutely.
that comes up next week.
Absolutely.
Maybe I can tell even more then as well.
We'll do that. So, Kate, thank you so much. And you can go back down and let Robert come back to the surface so that he can finish.
Thank you yourself. I'm glad. Initially I was scared to come out and to speak out in the open, because even though Robert said just pretend you're only talking with Daniel, I knew very well that people outside kind of listen to this, but I did also felt if this will not only help Robert, but this will help the other survivors out there like us, and we have seen a lot of them. Some have survived, and probably others have died, unfortunately. We are one of the lucky ones, I think, that Robert has survived. Then it is worth it to come out, even that I'm still nervous a little bit over my nervousness now, but yes, I will still come out next week as well and tell maybe additional things, and then also Clarissa will come out as well.
Okay.
And Heidi. She also will come out with her testimony, or part of her testimony. But Heidi told me, people, when I mentioned Heidi, she's an altar that was used in the Montauk project, and she was used in time travel. She was used, as she also told me, in being sent to different timelines. I'm not sure myself as Kate how that works exactly, but I guess next time as listeners you're going to find out what all of this will mean. And I think Robert already has asked Daniel if in the future there could be a follow-up on the Montauk project with the other lady that was on it as well. So then even Heidi can come out even in much longer terms than next week. And yes, we are pleased that we can come out in order to enlighten your audience, Christians and non-Christians alike, so that we can help people understand what is going on. And that also people as well get the help that they need. I am very pleased and happy that Robert finally found Bride Ministry, or Bride Ministry probably found Robert one way or another. But at least he get help, and I hope that other survivors out there who got altars like as they call us, like myself, on the inside, who have suffered. And I am glad that we have met the real Jesus Christ, because we had also, as you remember, quite a number of fake Jesuses running around on the inside as well, who were not as nice as the real one.
Yes.
And but I hope that our story will help not only for the public to understand more about what's really going on, but even more that other survivors find the courage to come forward, or at least try to find help. And as Robert would say, help that really will help them and not make them run in circles.
Right.
As Robert already mentioned before.
Well, Kate, thank you so much. And Robert, I'm going to invite you to come back to the surface at this time.
Hello again.
Well, hello again, Robert.
How did it go? She's less nervous as she is before, and she seemed now pleased that she came out.
Well, Kate did an outstanding job. And now I'm going to take a minute and explain to you folks what just happened here. When a person has dissociative identity disorder, It's really, I have a hard time using the word disorder, because it's an effort to survive. It's so much more than just a problem. It's a coping mechanism that is built in by God in order to allow people to survive very, very difficult things that's been hacked and hijacked by the powers of darkness. You know, what happens, it's kind of like an airplane. And in an airplane, for the normal person that hasn't been through much trauma, difficulty, whatever have you, it's like they're flying an F-15 fighter pilot. There's only one chair, and they're able to maneuver very easily and just move in and out and fly. But for the survivor, it's more like a 757. There's a lot of seats, and there is a cockpit where there is a pilot. That's like Robert, who I'm talking to now. He's the pilot. He's flying the airplane. But then there's a door behind the pilot. There's also a co-pilot chair. And the door behind the pilot leads to the stewardesses, who are immediately behind the cockpit. And they can move in and about into the cockpit throughout the airplane. They have a lot of mobility. Then there will be first class, which will be, excuse my wording here, but the most important people. Not that in real life, first class are more important than other people on the airplane, but in this example, the first class are the more powerful, the more influential parts of a person, and then behind them is the rest of the population that's on the airplane. This is kind of what it's like descending into a person's subconscious where their parts live. And so what happened was that Kate, when I had begun this process of asking, hey, can we talk with her about some of her memories? Kate, who I would say would be a first class type part of Robert. She's actually has a lot of memories, her own personality, her own method of speaking. She has all the characteristics of an independent person. She gets out of her seat and walks forward and sits in the co-pilot chair. When Robert said, she's standing next to me, essentially inside of himself, she has moved forward from where she was, somewhere inside, that's in the subconscious, and into the co-pilot chair. And she was sitting there waiting for him to turn over the flight controls to her. So when Robert said, hey, okay, I'm going to let Kate come out now, what happens is he flips the switch. It moves the controls of the airplane over to Kate, who's now sitting in the co-pilot chair, and she begins to fly the airplane. And I'm talking to Kate. When Kate is finished talking, she flips the switch, and the controls of the airplane go back to Robert, who is flying. He's in the pilot chair. Kate is able to get up, and she can walk back to her seat where she is on the inside. That is how switching can be illustrated with a model that a lot of us that just do not live this with this going on can understand, and how some of us that do live with this going on can put some tracks or some understanding to what happens in our lives. And so Robert, she did a great job. And as we're kind of down to the end of this program, you know, Kate has already kind of left us at a cliffhanger. We're going to be coming back, and really it won't be a second part. It'll be a part 4 of your story, and we'll be doing that. We'll probably be recording next week. What did you want to say in closing for this program?
No, in case people wonder how it works with the switching, although I think every survivor has his own way of doing things. In our case, I only want to say is we have created a system in which whoever is the host at the moment says is counting, let's say, from 1 till 3, and we already agreed on the inside the way how we do it. So when we want someone out who is standing down next to us, and we we count till 3, and then you take over, and also when we switching back. And we then closing our eyes, counting to 3, and by 3, in this case, Lauren, when she is the host, steps backwards, and then I takes over, or when I'm out, in this case with Kate, when I count 3, then she steps in, and I steps backwards. And people, that is in case if you wonder how it works with us. But of course, each survivor could have his own system created on their inside in how they switch and when. We also have agreed through a God's angel who decides, in most cases, when it is safe for certain altars to come out. That is another thing that we have agreed on our inside. And of course, I cannot speak for all survivors, because every survivor has to create his or her own systems. I can say, and I will say if there is, and I will now direct to counselors who are listening, if you work with survivors, especially Christian counselors, and you want to make sure that it is safe for the altars of your clients to switch, it would be wise, as Taylor said, to ask one of God's angels to come in on the inside and function, or 2 angels, one that function as a bouncer in order to make sure that darker altars cannot take over, but also one that is assigned to make sure that an altar a child altar can come out when it is safe. And that is how we have arranged it on the inside. But it would be advisable if other counselors would work in a similar setting for their clients, or or a slightly different, whatever works for them. And that is how it works with people like myself and others out there, in case people were wondering how it works when someone switches. In the past, before I had all of this, I was at times all over the place, because at times, for me to have memory loss, I thought that is something normal, because I thought everyone got this, till I found out it is not normal. There's not everyone has time loss suddenly, and it could be getting awake or get in the body in a completely different place. So yeah, this is what I want to say to listeners, and to maybe counselors who are listening to your show, Daniel, in a way how things work, at least on our inside, and how it also may could work to others. And to survivors, again, I want to say, if you have heard this, and you think, yes, I need help, because I'm running around in the psychiatric circuit with psychiatrists, therapists, and you have been heavily programmed, and you got severe memories of demonic programming like satanic ritual abuse, I would advise you then, the only way that you can get help is through organizations like ministries, as Bride Ministries of Daniel Duval, and there are maybe a few others out there as well, but get help as soon as possible, because every day that you go unsaved or unhealed is, to me, one too many.
Wow.
And there is a way out. I can tell you, I was lucky that I have been only for a short time out of my programming, and God has sent me help straight away. But I know a lot of survivors out there have been running around for 5, 10, 15, maybe sometimes even 20 years with no help at all, or being sent from one end to the wall to the next, and that is not needed. So as survivors, I would urge you, write ministries like Bride Ministries and others that work with survivors a letter and ask for help, and if they got places, then they can put you on the list, and hopefully in the future you can get help, because it is worth it in the end. Or let's put it this way, you as a person are worth it, and God wants you to get help.
Well, folks, that That's the word. Folks, Robert has a blog, and you can check it out at beyond-the-illusionary-veil.blogspot.co.uk. Robert, again, I just want to say thank you for being on my program, for being and for being so vulnerable, so as to allow your parts to come out and talk. This is, in my opinion, rather unprecedented, actually, that there is a switch that happens during an interview on purpose. And I just want to commend you for your bravery, for sticking it out. Your journey has been so long and hard. And, I just respect you and commend you for continuing and for not quitting. And folks, with that said, we are out of time. But we'll be back, and Robert will be back. You've been listening to Discovering the Truth with Dan Duval. God bless and Godspeed.
Discovering the Truth with Dan Duval is the premier radio program designed to center you on the kingdom of God, to equip you with faith in Jesus Christ, and to unveil the truth behind the lies. This program has been a production of Bride Ministries. You can find us at www.bridemovement.com. At our website, you can contact us, access resources, and support us with donations. We need partners in order to continue to produce our vision, which is to promote unity in the body of Christ worldwide and assist in the creation and development of sheep nations. Partner with us, and be sure to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. Until next time, God bless and Godspeed.